We don't have that kind of money, Emily. You need to be realistic. My father stood in the doorway of my apartment, arms crossed, face set with disapproval. Behind him, my mother nodded, lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. I stood there, my 7-year-old son Ethan asleep in the next room. Even with the oxygen machine running, his breathing was strained. Medical bills covered my kitchen table, each one a reminder of how badly I was failing. $85,000. That was what the specialist said the experimental treatment would cost, the one chance that could save Ethan's life. His rare heart condition no longer responded to standard treatments, and time was slipping away. My name is Emily. I'm 31, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I teach middle school science while raising Ethan on my own. His father left when Ethan was diagnosed at 3. He couldn't handle having a sick child. That was 4 years ago, and since then I've been fighting alone. My parents live just 20 minutes away in their comfortable suburban home, the same house where my younger sister Claire still had her childhood room perfectly preserved. Realistic? I repeated, my voice breaking. My son may die without this treatment. The doctor says maybe 6 months if we don't act now. My mother stepped forward, touching my father's arm in the gentle way she always did when she wanted to soften his words but wouldn't disagree with him. Honey, we know this is hard. But we've already helped you so much. We paid for 3 of his surgeries. We can't just drain our retirement accounts. I'm not asking you to empty them, I pleaded. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back every cent. I'll take a second job. I'll do whatever it takes. My father shook his head. Emily, you're already barely managing. How would you ever repay us? You need to be practical. There are financing options, payment plans. You should explore those. I had explored them. For weeks, I'd researched every possible option. The plans required more time than Ethan had. The financing companies demanded interest rates that would bury me for decades, and most wouldn't even approve me because I was already drowning in medical debt. I've tried everything else, I whispered. You're my last hope. For a moment, my mother's expression softened, and I thought she might sway him. But my father's voice was firm. We can't, Emily. I'm sorry, but we need to think about our own future. We're not young anymore. They left soon after. I stood at the window, watching their car disappear, the weight of their refusal crushing me. I went to Ethan's room and sat by his bed, listening to the steady hiss of the oxygen machine. His chest rose and fell unevenly. He looked so peaceful, unaware that his grandparents had just refused to save him. The next day, I called every family member I could think of, distant cousins, my mother's siblings, anyone who might help. Most offered sympathy and small contributions. My Aunt Teresa sent $500 with a note saying she wished it were more. I was grateful, but it was like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. 2 weeks later, I came home from an exhausting day at school to find Ethan struggling to breathe. His lips had turned blue and panic surged through me. I called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors stabilized him, but the cardiologist pulled me aside. His condition is worsening faster than we expected, Dr. Morrison said. Without the treatment, he may have 3 months left, maybe less. I nodded numbly, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. 3 months. Unless I could somehow raise $85,000. That night, I launched a crowdfunding campaign. I poured my heart into the story, sharing photos of Ethan's bright smile from before he became so ill. Friends shared it, colleagues donated, even some of my students' parents contributed. After 2 weeks, though, I had only raised $12,000. It wasn't nearly enough. Then came a phone call from Claire. My sister's voice was filled with excitement. Emily, I have the best news. Jeffrey proposed. We're getting married. I tried to sound enthusiastic, though my chest felt heavy. That's wonderful, Claire. Congratulations. I know, right? And Mom and Dad are being so generous. They're paying for the whole wedding. Can you believe it? They said we can have whatever we want. No budget limits. Jeffrey and I are thinking about a destination wedding, maybe Italy or the south of France. Oh, Emily, it's going to be absolutely perfect. My grip on the phone tightened. No budget limits? None, she said cheerfully. Dad said it's his little girl's special day and nothing is too much. We're meeting with wedding planners next week. The wedding isn't until next year, but we want to start organizing early to make sure everything is perfect. I stood in my cramped apartment, medical bills scattered on every surface, while my son struggled to breathe in the next room, and listened to my sister rave about her unlimited wedding budget. Something heavy settled in my chest, a quiet realization that would grow stronger over the months ahead. The following months blurred into endless hospital visits and constant anxiety. I maxed out credit cards, took loans at impossible interest rates, and sold nearly everything I owned. My grandmother's ring, the only thing passed down from my mother, was pawned for $800. I downgraded my car to a failing 15-year-old sedan. I left my one-bedroom apartment for a studio just to save money. Meanwhile, Claire's wedding planning carried on like an unstoppable tide. Every family dinner, every call, every conversation led back to the wedding. My parents threw themselves into it. Tastings at five-star restaurants, venue tours in Tuscany via video calls, discussions about flower arrangements that cost more than my monthly paycheck. I tried to feel happy for Claire. She was my younger sister, and once we'd been close. But that closeness had faded as our parents treated us differently. Claire was the golden child, excelling at everything: honors graduate, prestigious marketing job, perfect boyfriends. I was the one who got pregnant at 23 by a man who abandoned us, who became a teacher instead of choosing a high-paying career, who now couldn't keep her son alive. One July evening, my mother called. "Emily, honey, we need to talk about the wedding." "What about it?" I asked, exhausted from teaching summer school and 3 hours at the hospital with Ethan. "Well, Claire wants you as a bridesmaid, of course. But the dresses are about $300, and you'll need to order soon." $300. I calculated quickly. That was nearly 2 weeks of Ethan's medication. "I don't know if I can afford that right now." There was silence. "Emily, this is your sister's wedding." "I know, but things are tight. Ethan's treatments." "You're always talking about Ethan's medical bills," she interrupted sharply. "I understand he's sick, but life goes on for the rest of us. This is Claire's special day." I closed my eyes. "Can I think about it?" "The deadline's next week. Claire has her heart set on you being in the wedding party." After hanging up, I sat alone in the dark and cried. How had my family become so blind? My son was dying, and they were focused on dresses and seating charts. Ethan's condition worsened. We had missed the window for experimental treatment. Doctors shifted to palliative care, trying only to keep him comfortable. Each day I watched him fade a little more, his once bright spirit dimming with his strength. He stopped asking when he could return to school. He no longer spoke about becoming a scientist. Somehow he knew his time was running out. I took unpaid leave from teaching to stay with him, which only deepened my financial crisis. I applied for every program, grant, or charity I could, but most had waitlists or requirements I couldn't meet. 5 months after my parents refused to help, Claire's bachelorette party took place. My mother called, thrilled. They had rented a villa in Napa Valley, 12 of Claire's friends, all expenses paid by my parents. Wine tastings, spa visits, a private chef. "It was magical," she gushed. Claire was glowing with happiness. "How much did it cost?" I asked. "Oh, I don't know. Your father handled it." "Maybe $10,000. But it was worth every penny to see her so joyful. $10,000. More than 1/10 of what could have saved Ethan, spent in one weekend. Something inside me broke, a loyalty I had held onto despite everything. "That sounds wonderful," I said flatly. "You know, Emily, I wish you'd be more excited." "Claire feels you're not supporting her." I laughed bitterly. "She feels I'm not supporting her? She's noticed you're distant. And you still haven't confirmed if you'll be a bridesmaid." "I told you." "I can't afford the dress." "Well, maybe if you managed your money better, you wouldn't be in this position." Her words cut deep. Manage my money better. As if fighting to keep my child alive was wasteful. As if overwhelming medical debt was my fault, instead of a broken system and a family who chose luxury over their grandson's life. "I have to go," I said. "Of course you do. Ethan always needs you," she replied, her voice lined with judgment. "Maybe if you didn't focus so much on his problems, you could enjoy life more." "Claire manages everything so well." I hung up. By October, the cold settled in. Ethan was in and out of the hospital, his small body losing the fight. Doctors spoke quietly about weeks, not months. I spent every moment beside him, reading stories, holding his hand, describing what heaven might be like. My parents visited occasionally, usually on their way to wedding appointments. They stayed for minutes, then left, relieved to return to brighter things. Watching them avoid their dying grandson was painful. Claire visited once, standing in the doorway in expensive clothes, lasting barely 5 minutes before leaving for a dress fitting. "He's so thin," she whispered, as if it were news. Yes, I replied, it must be so hard for you. She touched my arm, a gesture meant as comfort, but it felt hollow. But you're so strong. Emily, you've always been strong. I'd heard that phrase countless times over the past year, usually from people relieved they didn't have to carry this burden themselves. Strong enough not to ask for help. Strong enough to endure watching your child slip away while your family poured money into a party? The wedding is in 3 weeks, Claire continued. I hope you'll reconsider being a bridesmaid. It would mean a lot to me, and maybe it would be good for you, a chance to celebrate something happy, to take a break from everything. A break, as if I could step away from my son's death. As if I could wear an expensive dress, smile for photographs, and pretend life was fine while Ethan struggled for every breath. I'll think about it, I lied, because explaining how her words cut me was harder. The invitations had arrived at my apartment 2 months earlier, heavy cardstock with gold embossing. Each set probably cost $50 per guest. These days I did the math automatically, translating every expense into treatments we couldn't afford. Those invitations could have paid for a month of physical therapy. The venue deposit could have covered a year of medication. Later, I learned the wedding's total cost, $230,000. The number echoed in my mind like a siren. Nearly 3 times the amount that could have saved Ethan's life, all spent on a single day. The venue alone was $80,000, the exact sum I had begged for. The flowers were $15,000, the catering $40,000, the dress $12,000. I discovered these amounts gradually, overhearing conversations or through my mother's casual remarks. She never seemed to realize how each figure pierced me. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ethan had a terrible day. His heart faltered, alarms blaring as nurses rushed in. I held his small hand as the team fought to stabilize him. They succeeded, but afterward Dr. Morrison pulled me aside. Emily, he doesn't have much time left. Days, maybe a week. You should call family, anyone who may want to say goodbye. I phoned my parents. My father answered, distracted. Emily, we're in the middle of the rehearsal dinner setup. Can this wait? Ethan is dying, I said flatly. The doctor says days at most. A pause then. Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. Do you need us to come? Do I need you to come? My son, their grandson, was dying, and he was asking if I needed them. Yes, I said. I think Ethan would want to see you. Of course, we'll try tomorrow. We have the final venue walkthrough in the afternoon, but maybe in the morning. They arrived the next day at 10 a.m., Starbucks cups in hand. They stayed 15 minutes. Ethan was barely conscious, his breathing shallow despite maximum oxygen. My mother cried softly, dabbing her eyes with a tissue that probably cost more than Ethan's meal. My father lingered near the door, checking his watch. We have to go, he finally said. The florist is expecting us at 11. The florist? I repeated, stunned. For the centerpieces. It's critical we get this right. No mistakes this close to the wedding. He didn't recognize the bitter irony of his words, spoken beside a child who was slipping away. They left with promises to return, promises I knew they wouldn't keep. Claire never came to say goodbye to her nephew. She was too busy with last-minute wedding issues, like replacing a cellist in her string quartet. That was apparently a crisis worth frantic calls. Ethan passed away on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before Claire's wedding. He went quietly in his sleep, his tiny hand still in mine. The nurse who pronounced him gone wept more than my parents did when I called to tell them. My mother's first words, "Oh no. Oh, Emily, no, what terrible timing. Terrible timing, because the funeral would interfere with the wedding schedule." That was when something inside me shifted. The grief was crushing, but beneath it a cold, steady clarity took root. They had made their choice. Now I would make mine. The funeral was set for Friday, 2 days before Claire's Sunday wedding. I didn't ask my parents to reschedule. I didn't ask Claire to postpone. I already knew the answer, and I didn't have the strength. To hear them explain why their celebration mattered more than my son's burial. What I didn't expect was for them to ask me to change the funeral. My mother called on Wednesday evening. "Emily, honey, we need to discuss the funeral arrangements." I was in Ethan's room, surrounded by his belongings, his favorite dinosaur poster, the rock collection he gathered at the park, and the science kit I'd bought last Christmas, still unused because he'd been too sick. "What about them?" I asked. "Well, Friday is difficult for us. We have the wedding rehearsal that afternoon, then the rehearsal dinner in the evening." Everything's scheduled and deposits paid. Could you move the funeral to Thursday or even next week? I stared at the wall, unable to comprehend. You want me to reschedule my son's funeral because it clashes with a rehearsal dinner? It's not just rehearsal, Emily. The entire schedule is set. Jeffrey's family is flying in from Atlanta. Your father is giving a toast. We simply can't miss it. Of course we'll honor Ethan, but Thursday would be easier for everyone. The funeral home should manage the change. Everyone? My voice was flat, drained. I was past anger and pain, left only with numb disbelief. Everyone would be better served if we bury my 8-year-old son early so you don't miss cocktails. Don't exaggerate, Emily. You're making it sound worse. We're trying to support you and Claire both. Why can't you be more accommodating? You know how important this wedding is to your sister. I hung up, afraid of what else I might say. The funeral stayed on Friday. I arranged everything myself, paying with money borrowed from my principal, who'd shown me more care this past year than my parents. It was a small service, just 20 people. My Aunt Teresa came, some teachers, and a few of Ethan's classmates' parents. My parents showed up 45 minutes late, dressed in outfits clearly chosen for the wedding festivities. They stayed through the service but skipped the small reception I'd organized at my apartment. We really have to go, my mother said, brushing a kiss across my cheek. Claire's having a crisis with the seating chart, but it was a lovely service. Very tasteful. That was how she described my son's funeral. I watched them leave for what they considered more urgent matters, and I felt something harden inside me. The grief was still overwhelming, but it became locked behind a wall of cold clarity. Saturday, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by sympathy cards and unpaid medical bills. The crowdfunding campaign that had once raised $12,000 had been drained months earlier on treatments that only delayed the inevitable. Now I owed $73,000 in medical debt, $25,000 in maxed-out credit cards, and 2 months overdue rent. Ethan's death hadn't ended my financial nightmare, it had made it meaningless. Messages from relatives and friends buzzed on my phone. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I didn't respond. What I needed was impossible. I needed my son alive. I needed different parents. I needed the last year to be nothing more than a nightmare. Sunday morning, Claire's wedding day, I woke early. I hadn't planned to think about it, but my phone lit up with a text from my mother. Wish you were here to share this special day. Claire looks stunning. I stared at the message. Wish I was there? As if I'd simply chosen not to attend instead of burying my child 2 days earlier. I got dressed and went for a walk. Columbus was beautiful in late October, the leaves turning gold and red. Autumn had been Ethan's favorite season. We'd planned a pumpkin patch trip this year, another memory that would never happen. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed again and again. Photos from the wedding. My mother had added me to a family group chat. I watched images load one by one, the Tuscan venue glowing at golden hour, Claire in a designer gown that cost more than a car, elaborate floral displays, a 5-tier cake, a champagne tower, and a string quartet overlooking the vineyards. A $230,000 celebration while my son lay in a cemetery without a headstone I couldn't yet afford. Everyone looked radiant. My father, proud in his tuxedo. My mother in an elegant $3,000 dress. Claire and her new husband glowing with joy. Relatives I'd once begged for help now celebrating with champagne worth more per bottle than they ever donated to Ethan's treatments. One photo showed my parents dancing, my mother laughing with abandon. The caption, "Best day ever. So blessed." I set my phone down and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I'd lost 15 pounds in a month, with hollow eyes and deep shadows beneath them. I looked years older, like someone who had watched her child die while her family celebrated elsewhere. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a promise. This wasn't the end. They thought Ethan's life and mine could be brushed aside so they could enjoy their perfect celebration. They thought money and status could shield them from responsibility. They were wrong. I didn't know how yet, but I would make them see. Not revenge, justice. A reckoning. I pulled out a notebook and wrote everything down. Every conversation, every refusal, every dollar. The timeline of events. When I asked for help, when they declined. When wedding planning began. When Ethan died. Who came to the funeral? Who didn't? Every expense my mother mentioned. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but I needed proof. A record of what had been taken from Ethan and from me. Later, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother, home from Italy. exhausted but so happy. Claire and Jeffrey's first dance was magical. I'll send you the video, I typed back. Glad you had a good time. The typing dots appeared, vanished, then reappeared. Finally, we'll come by next week to check on you. I'm sure you're feeling better by now. Feeling better. As though grief followed a timetable. As though 1 week after losing a child, you were expected to be healed and ready to hear how magical someone else's party had been. I stayed silent. The weeks after the wedding passed in a dull haze. I went back to work, drifting through my days like a shadow. My students were kind, gentler than they'd ever been. The administration offered me extended bereavement leave, but I refused. I needed routine, something to fill the hours once spent at doctor's visits, managing medications, and holding on to hope. My parents called now and then, quick check-ins that felt more like duties than care. How are you holding up? They'd ask before filling the silence with news of Claire's honeymoon, their remodeling plans, or upcoming holidays. They never spoke Ethan's name. It was as if he had never been, as if admitting his absence might spoil their cheer. Claire sent one short text. I'm sorry about everything. I hope we can move past this, move past this. Move past watching my son die. Move past being abandoned by my family. Move past knowing she had a $4 million wedding while my child suffocated because we couldn't afford treatment. I didn't reply to that either. In December, 2 months after Ethan's death, my parents invited me to Christmas dinner. I nearly declined, but curiosity won. I wanted to see them, to understand how they lived with what they'd done. Their home looked like something from a glossy magazine, a 12-foot tree, professional decorations, garlands, and lights everywhere. The scent of expensive catering filled the air. Claire and Jeffrey were already there when I arrived, tanned and relaxed from their Bali honeymoon. Emily, my mother hugged me, her perfume heavy. I'm so glad you came. We've missed you. I stood stiff in her embrace. Thank you for inviting me. Dinner was extravagant, prime rib, lobster tails, sides I couldn't name. My father proudly announced the wine cost $200 a bottle. Everyone laughed and shared stories from the wedding, the honeymoon, their comfortable lives. I sat quietly, pushing food on my plate. Emily, you're so quiet, Claire said, her voice wearing a concerned tone that didn't reach her eyes. Are you okay? I'm fine. You know, she continued, glancing at Jeffrey, we were thinking, maybe you should consider moving somewhere else. A fresh start might help you heal. Columbus holds too many sad memories. I looked at her, my sister in name only. Where would I go? I don't know. Somewhere cheaper, maybe. I know you're struggling financially. Jeffrey's company has an office in Kansas City. The cost of living is much lower there. We could help you find something, help me move away. Remove the uncomfortable reminder of their choices. I'll think about it, I said. Another lie. My father cleared his throat. Emily, your mother and I have been discussing your situation. We think you should consider bankruptcy. It's the responsible option given your debt. Bankruptcy for your medical bills. You'll never repay them on a teacher's salary. Better to wipe the slate clean and start over. Start over. As if Ethan were a mistake to be corrected, a financial error to be written off. We could help you find a good bankruptcy attorney, my mother added. Your father knows several. I set my fork down carefully. You know what would have helped? $85,000, 15 months ago. The table went silent. Claire shifted uncomfortably. My mother's smile froze. Emily, my father said, his voice warning. We've been over this. Have we? Because I don't remember discussing it. You said no, and that was it. We made a hard decision based on our financial situation. Your financial situation? I gestured around the room. This doesn't look like hardship. A $230,000 wedding doesn't suggest financial struggle. Claire's face flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? I stood, my chair scraping against their polished floor. You spent almost 3 times what could have saved Ethan's life on one day. A party. Flowers, cake, and a dress you'll wear once. Emily, that's enough, my father said, rising too, his face red with anger. We made the choice we thought was right. We're not going to apologize for supporting your sister's happiness over Ethan's life. What about supporting that? He was sick, my mother said, her voice trembling. The doctor said there was no guarantee the treatment would work. We weren't going to waste money on something that might not help. But you'd waste twice that much on party favors and centerpieces thrown away the next day. Get out, my father said. If you're going to be disrespectful, leave. I grabbed my coat. Don't worry, I'm going. "You're just bitter because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted," Claire called after me. "It's not our fault you made bad choices." I stopped at the door and turned back. They were all standing now, a united front. My parents, my sister, her husband, secure and self-righteous. "Bad choices," I repeated. Like trusting family, like believing blood meant something, like thinking you'd choose your grandson over a party. I walked out into the cold December night and got into my battered car. I sat for a moment, watching through the window as they settled back into their expensive dinner, probably already dismissing me as dramatic, unstable, ungrateful. That was the last time I spoke to any of them for 4 years. Life went on because that's what it does. I declared bankruptcy, as my father had suggested, clearing most of my medical debt but destroying my credit for years. I moved into a cheaper apartment in a rougher neighborhood. I took tutoring jobs in the evenings and summers to survive. I existed, but I didn't live. I also planned. I couldn't act yet. I was too powerless, too broken, too consumed by grief and survival. But I was patient. I watched from a distance, following their lives through social media accounts they didn't realize I could still access. I documented everything, adding to my notebooks. I waited. Claire got pregnant a year after her wedding. My mother posted constant updates about the pregnancy, the baby shower, the nursery. The baby, a girl named Sophia, arrived healthy and perfect. The photos showed my parents beaming, holding their first grandchild as though Ethan had never existed, as though Sophia was their first and only. I saw one comment on my mother's Facebook post from a distant cousin. "Your first grandchild." "So exciting," my mother's reply. "Yes, we're over the moon." No correction. Not even a hint that another grandchild had existed, had died, had mattered. Ethan had been erased from the family story. I took a screenshot and added it to my collection. 2 years after Ethan's passing, I returned to school, taking online classes at night while working toward a master's degree in educational administration. Within 3 years, I was promoted to assistant principal. The raise was modest, but it was progress. I was building something carefully, step by step. I also began saving, placing every extra dollar into a separate account I never touched. I wasn't sure what I was saving for, but I knew resources would be essential. Strength required capital. During those years, my parents made occasional attempts to reconnect. Birthday cards with generic notes, Christmas gifts mailed as store gift cards I never used. Once, my father called to say they had opened a small college fund for Sophia and asked if I wanted to contribute. I hung up on him. Claire sent a birth announcement for her second child, a boy named Jackson. The card featured their polished family photo, expensive outfits, and practiced smiles. On the back, someone had added, "Hope you're doing well," almost as an afterthought. I kept every card, every announcement, every dismissive gesture as evidence. By the 4th year after Ethan's death, I had become principal of a thriving middle school, earning enough for a comfortable life. Still, I lived modestly. I had rebuilt myself from nothing, shaping a life with purpose and meaning, even without the person who once gave it both. Meanwhile, I continued following my family's lives. Claire's husband, Jeffrey, had been promoted to vice president. They moved into a larger home in an exclusive neighborhood. My parents joined a country club, traveled often, and posted photos from beaches in European cities. Life was not just good for them, it was thriving. Then, one early spring morning, everything shifted. An unfamiliar email appeared in my inbox. The subject read, "Important Family Matter." I nearly deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. "Emily, this is your Aunt Teresa. I thought you should know. Your father lost his job 3 months ago. He's kept it quiet, but things are serious. His entire retirement savings were tied up in company stock, which collapsed when the firm went bankrupt. Your parents have lost nearly everything. They're facing foreclosure on their house. I know your relationship is strained, but you should be aware. Your father is too proud to ask for help, but they truly need it. Please call me. Love, Teresa." I read it 3 times, then searched online. The news was easy to find. My father's company, a regional manufacturer, was exposed in a large fraud scandal. The CEO faced federal charges. Bankruptcy followed, and thousands of employees lost jobs and retirement savings. My father's name appeared in several articles as a senior executive who had lost it all. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. After years of watching them live comfortably on the memory of my son, they had lost everything. Some might call it karma, others justice. I didn't have a word for it. It wasn't satisfaction, it was recognition. The balance had shifted. I was no longer powerless. A week later, my phone rang. My mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. She called again the next day, and the next. I never answered. Then in May came a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw my father, grayer, thinner, worn down. I opened the door but kept the chain on. Yes, Emily. His voice cracked on my name. Please, we need to talk. About what? Can I come in? No, he winced. I know things have been hard. We've made mistakes. But we're family. We need help. Help? The word felt strange in my mouth. I lost my job. You probably know. We're in serious trouble. The house is in foreclosure. Your mother's health insurance ran out and she needs treatment. Claire and Jeffrey are doing what they can, but they have their own family. We hoped you might contribute, even a small amount. A loan, maybe, until things improve. I looked at him through the narrow gap. When my situation improves? I know you're doing better now. I saw online that you're a principal. That must pay decently. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. Desperate? I said softly. I remember being desperate once. His face flushed. Emily, please? This isn't the time to revisit the past, isn't it? I smiled, though it wasn't kind. You're asking for money because you're about to lose everything. Sounds familiar. This is different. How? You're my parents, and Ethan was your grandson. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I asked, how much? Hope flickered in his eyes. We owe about $90,000 on the house. If we could cover that, we'd keep it. But even $20,000 or $30,000 would help. $90,000. More than what could have saved Ethan. Something cold and final settled in me. I'll think about it, I said, closing the door in his face. Leaning against the wall, I smiled. After 4 years of waiting, planning, and rebuilding, the moment had come. Now came the reckoning. I didn't reach out for 2 weeks. Let them wait. Let them worry. Let them feel the weight of uncertainty. Each passing day, their crisis deepened. I knew this because I checked foreclosure listings. Their house, the one I grew up in, was scheduled for auction in 45 days. During those 2 weeks, my mother called 17 times, my father 9, and Claire sent 3 long messages. She insisted our parents had always done their best, that they were good people who made mistakes, and that families were meant to forgive and support one another. The irony seemed lost on her. I ignored them all. Instead, I researched. From what I could see, their financial situation wasn't dire. The house was worth around $320,000, with $90,000 still owed. They had equity, but not enough to restart comfortably. They'd need to downsize to a modest apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. They would have to depend on Social Security and whatever work my father could find, if anyone was willing to hire a 63-year-old disgraced executive. It would be difficult, humbling, and a complete reversal of the life they had built, but survivable. That was the difference between their struggle and Ethan's. They weren't facing death, just discomfort. On the 15th day, I finally returned my father's call. Emily, he sounded breathless, almost desperate. Thank God, I was so afraid you wouldn't call. I've been thinking about your request. His hope was obvious, raw in his voice. I want us all to meet. Your mother, Claire, and you. We need to talk. Fine, my apartment Saturday at 2 p.m. Thank you. Emily, you don't know what this means to us? I hung up without replying. Saturday came, gray and cold, fitting weather for the day ahead. I spent the morning preparing, arranging chairs in my small living room, placing a folder on the table with documents printed and ordered. At exactly 2 p.m., they arrived. My father looked thinner, his suit loose on his frame. My mother seemed older, her hair grayer, her face heavy with worry. Claire looked out of place, overdressed for my shabby apartment, gripping her designer purse tightly. Emily, my mother said, stepping forward for a hug. I moved back. Sit down. They sat together on my worn couch, huddled like children called before a principal. I stayed standing. You asked me for $90,000. We know it's a lot, my father began quickly, but we're willing to offer collateral, sign a formal agreement, and repay you with interest. How? I asked evenly. You don't have income. Mom doesn't work. How would you repay me? I'm searching for work. Something will come through. At 63? With your reputation after a fraud scandal? He flinched. That wasn't my fault. I had no idea what the CEO was doing. Ignorance isn't innocence. You were a senior executive. You should have known, I picked up the folder. But we're not here to revisit your career failures. We're here about your request. Will you help us? My mother asked softly. That depends. I have questions. I opened the folder. Do you remember this? 4 years ago, May 16th, I asked you for $85,000 for Ethan's treatment. My mother went pale. Emily, we've already discussed this. Have we? Not honestly. I held up a printout of my crowdfunding page. The cost clearly listed, $85,000. You told me you couldn't afford it, that you had to think of your retirement. We made the best decision we could, my father said stiffly. Did you? I slid out another paper. This is a receipt from Claire's wedding planner. $230,000 paid in full, just 18 months after you claimed you couldn't afford to save your grandson's life. Claire jumped up. This isn't fair. You're twisting everything. Sit down, I said firmly, and she obeyed. I placed more receipts on the table. Venue $80,000, flowers $15,000, catering $40,000, dress $12,000, photographer $8,000, entertainment $10,000. Shall I continue? What do you want? My father demanded, an apology. Fine, we're sorry. We made a mistake. Is that what you want to hear? A mistake? I repeated quietly. You think choosing a wedding over your grandson's life was just a mistake? We didn't know he'd die, my mother whispered. Yes, you did. The doctors told you. I told you. You knew, and you chose not to act. I pulled out the hardest document of all, a photo of Ethan in his hospital bed taken 2 weeks before he died. This is what $85,000 could have saved. Your grandson. Remember him? My mother cried. Claire looked away. My father stared at the photo blankly. Emily, please. My mother wept. We know we failed. We know we should have done more, but we can't undo it. All we can ask for now is your mercy. Mercy? I placed the photo back in the folder. I don't recall much mercy when I begged you for help, when I sold everything, maxed out credit cards, lived in a studio, and ate instant noodles to pay for his medication. We didn't realize how serious it was, my father muttered. Didn't you? I showed you bills. I told you without treatment he would die. What part of that wasn't clear? Silence. But you understood the importance of Claire's wedding. The perfect venue, the flawless decor. You knew exactly what mattered to you. I sat down across from them, calm but firm. Here's what I've realized in 4 years. You didn't help Ethan because you chose not to. It wasn't about money. You had it. You proved that. It was about priorities, and you made yours clear. That's not true, Claire protested. They were protecting their retirement, she insisted. Really? Because they spent 3 times that on your wedding. Numbers don't lie, Claire. Priorities don't lie. My father leaned forward. Emily, you're angry, and you have every right. But are you going to punish us now when we need you most? Will you be as cruel as you believe we were? Cruel? I repeated. Is it cruel to act on your own priorities? To use your resources for what matters to you rather than someone else's crisis? That's the lesson you taught me when Ethan was dying. So you won't help us? My mother asked flatly. I didn't say that. I pulled out the final item from the folder, a check for $90,000. Hope lit up their faces. Urgent, desperate. But I continued. There are conditions. Anything, my father said quickly. We'll sign whatever you want. Payment plans, interest, collateral. It's not about money. I placed the check on the table between us. It was for $90,000 dated today. The first condition is that you admit, here and now, that you chose Claire's wedding over Ethan's life. That you had the money and refused to help. I want to hear you say it. They froze. Claire looked at our parents. You don't have to do this. She's trying to embarrass you. Yes, I replied. Just like you embarrassed me when I begged for help. When I stood at your door with medical bills and you told me to be realistic. When I buried my son alone because you had a rehearsal dinner. So yes, I want you to admit that Ethan died because of your choice. My mother sobbed harder. My father's face burned red. But they needed that check desperately. We chose the wedding, my father finally whispered. We had the money and spent it on Claire's wedding instead of Ethan's treatment. And because of that, I pressed, he died. I turned to my mother. She whispered, we should have helped. We should have saved him. We were wrong. Then I looked at Claire. And you? What's your part in this? I didn't know, she insisted quickly. I didn't know they refused to help Ethan. Didn't you? I asked. You never wondered where the money came from for your wedding? You didn't think it strange when I asked you to postpone your bachelorette party because Ethan was hospitalized, and you refused? You never questioned holding your wedding 3 days after your nephew's funeral? She stayed silent. Here's the second condition, I continued. You take this money, save your house, and never contact me again. No birthday cards, no gifts, no calls. You erase me from your lives the way you erased Ethan from your memories. Emily, you can't mean that, my mother pleaded. We're family. No, I corrected. We share DNA. Family is different. Family shows up. Family sacrifices. Family doesn't let children die while they plan parties. I stood, opened the door. Those are my conditions. Take the check or leave it. You have 60 seconds. They exchanged looks, silent but telling. I watched them weigh pride against desperation. It took 43 seconds. My father lifted the check. We accept your conditions, he said hollowly. Good. The document next to the check is a legal agreement. No further contact. Sign it. They signed without reading, proof of their desperation. My father's hand shook. My mother's tears blurred the ink. Claire's strokes were harsh with anger. When finished, I took the document and handed them the check. You can go now. Emily, my father started. No, I cut in. You agreed. No contact means no contact. Leave. They left silently, my mother weeping, my father hunched, Claire stiff with fury. I closed and locked the door, then I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank account. The $90,000 transfer had reduced my savings to just $12,000. Years of careful saving gone in one morning. But I wasn't finished. I drafted an email to my Aunt Teresa, the only one who ever cared. I attached a detailed letter I'd written months ago, waiting for this moment. Aunt Teresa, I want you to know what really happened with Ethan. I've attached a full timeline of events, my requests for help, their refusals, and their spending on Claire's wedding. Please share with whoever should see it. Love, Emily. The attachment contained everything. Conversations, denials, expenses, hospital bills, a photo of Ethan in his hospital bed, screenshots of my mother calling Sophia her first grandchild online, and proof they attended Claire's rehearsal dinner instead of Ethan's funeral reception. Teresa had a wide network. Emails, social media, constant sharing. By tomorrow, everyone would know. My parents' friends, their church, neighbors, country club, everyone would learn the truth. The check would clear, they'd keep their house, but they'd lose what they prized most, their reputation. An hour later, a knock. Through the peephole, I saw Claire, furious. I opened the door but didn't let her in. You signed an agreement not to contact me. That email, you can't do that. You're destroying their lives. I'm telling the truth, I replied. That's different. You're vindictive. You're ruining them out of spite. No, I said calmly. I'm giving them what they gave me, consequences. They made choices and now they live with them. Just like I live with losing my son. They gave you $90,000, she snapped. They returned a fraction of what they stole from Ethan, and only because they had no choice. If they weren't desperate, would they have helped? We both know the answer. You'll never let this go, will you? You'll hate us forever. I don't hate you, I realized aloud. Hate requires caring. I don't care anymore. You stopped being my family the day you chose a party over my son's life. Now you're just strangers with my last name. Mom is devastated. Dad is broken. Was it worth it? Ask Ethan if it was worth it. Oh, wait, you can't because he's gone. Claire's expression collapsed. You truly are as cold as they claimed. Cold? My heart shattered 4 years ago, and you weren't there to witness it. You were too preoccupied with your flawless wedding and carefully designed life. So don't accuse me of being heartless, Claire. That word isn't yours to use. She turned away, and I closed the door for the final time on my biological family. In the months that followed, I learned indirectly what became of them. My parents were indeed shunned socially. Friends stopped calling. Their country club membership was quietly revoked. Church became so uncomfortable that they eventually stopped attending. They kept their home, but it turned into a kind of prison, walls that echoed with the weight of their decisions. My father secured consulting work, earning only a fraction of his past salary. My mother struggled with anxiety and sought therapy. Claire and Jeffrey relocated to another state, placing distance between themselves and the scandal. Their once grand Christmas cards never arrived again. I later heard my mother told people I was dead, claiming it was simpler than explaining why her daughter wanted no connection with her. Perhaps she was right. That version of me, the one grateful for scraps, who accepted being second best, who silenced her pain just to maintain peace, that daughter no longer existed. As for me, I kept moving forward. Eventually, I dated, cautiously. I built friendships with people who stood by me in difficult times. I traveled to places Ethan would have cherished, scattering his ashes in breathtaking places across the world. I lived for both of us. The $90,000 I gave my parents was worth it. Not because they merited help, but because it gave me closure. I had shown that I was the stronger person, the one who extended compassion even when none was returned. And then I walked away, leaving them to live under the shadow of their choices. Some might argue that was harsh, that true forgiveness means releasing all bitterness and helping without expectation. But those people never watched their child die alone while the family celebrated elsewhere. They never had to decide between paying for electricity or medicine. They never buried their child with borrowed money while knowing millions had been spent on cake and flowers. I gave my parents what they demanded, but strictly on my terms. I fulfilled my final duty as their daughter, then closed that door permanently, just as they once closed it on Ethan when he needed them most. In the end, revenge wasn't cruelty. It was justice. It was balance. It was ensuring that actions carried consequences. My parents had taught me that family was conditional, that love had limits, and that some lives mattered more than others. I merely reflected those lessons back, wrapped in a check they couldn't refuse and a truth they couldn't escape. And I moved forward, into a future they would never share, carrying Ethan's memory with me, finally at peace.